the deliberate attack when we come back. I'm Dr. Christopher Larsen, a veteran of the U.S. Army Infantry, founder of One Shepherd Leadership Institute, and author of Small Unit Tactical Doctrine. With all the things going on in the world today, I have to say that I am actually very glad to get back finally to a small unit tactics, episode. Yay, my favorite subject. Right beside me, I don't talk about them too much, but this is Paintball and Airsoft Battle Tactics, and I will bring up that this is the book that One Shepherd Leadership Institute uses. It covers roughly, I don't know that anybody's actually measured it, but we say roughly 80% of the curriculum. I think the big thing is that we just see it as a very, very useful book. And it is a useful book with a horrible title. That wasn't its original title. That was the publisher. It was one of the sticking points I argued with. Lost. And I think, honestly, this book now is coming up on 12 years old. And no, it's over that, isn't it? Anyway, point is that it's been my absolute worst seller. And I think that's because of the title. Where do you stick it? Where do you put it? We refer to it as the battle tactics book. And I think at one point we had either called it the platoon or patrolling battle tactics or something like this. But the publisher wanted to be called Paintball and Airsoft Battle Tactics so that they thought it would sell better. To be honest, I think in the last dozen years it has somewhere, maybe just peaking over the 10,000 copies sold. And that's not shabby, don't get me wrong, but in regards to my other books, it's my worst seller. And you'll find a lot of what we're going to discuss today, the down and the dirty by the numbers right in this book. You've been given the mission of deliberate attack. And if you're feeling a little bit intimidated, you should. If you haven't studied the area defense, which is what we're going to deliberately attack, if you haven't done that, please do. I'll try to remember to link that somewhere in this video. But the point here is that if you're nervous about a deliberate attack, you have every right to be. The advantages of the defense are, number one, that they've chosen good terrain. Number two, that they know you're coming. The defense is exposing somewhere between, say, 10 to 25% of their body to our fires, and we are up running around exposing anywhere from, say, 40% up to 80% of our bodies to their fires, toe to toe. We have a clear disadvantage. They have cover and concealment. We have little of either. The whole idea of, oh my gosh, a frontal attack, this is going to be terrible. We're going to discuss how to mitigate that and make it not so terrible. And talk about, when you have the deliberate attack, what advantages you bring to bear and how to exploit those to your advantage. But I think we need to recognize several things here. The advantages that the deliberate attack bring are several. One, you choose the exact location and you choose the exact time. And if you're not doing that, if you're letting something else force you into that, well, you better back up and recheck your battle plan, because that's just called a frontal attack, and it's also known as a suicide wave. So you get to choose the time and the place, okay, as much as is feasible. How do you choose that? Well, good intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, ISR assets. That's how you choose the time and the place, and that is certainly an advantage of the deliberate attack. The other thing is that you mass. If the area defense has to distribute its combat power across a broad spectrum of geospace, as the deliberate attack, you should not. You should not attack them everywhere. You should choose a very tiny place and punch through their defenses like a needle hitting a balloon. You need to break through at a very tiny place. And I think these are the two mistakes I see deliberate attacks make repeatedly by novice commanders. They either A, seek to attack the enemy everywhere, thereby allowing the enemy to employ all of their combat power against us, the deliberate attack. You can see why that doesn't get us very far. Or they say, oh no, I'm clever enough to know I want to attack at one place, but I want to find a flank. So we run up and down, exposing ourselves to all the enemy's defensive combat power as we seek for a flank that doesn't exist. The enemy isn't stupid. If they create a flank, you can pretty much bet that they're going to exploit that they are channelizing us or canalizing us into that door that they opened. So, and in the meantime, we're just getting slaughtered as we run back and forth. And this is what I see novice commanders do, is they don't commit to the fight in front of them. With that warning ahead, let's jump into it and let's think about the deliberate attack as you will actually get it. All right, you receive the mission. That's step 1 of troop leading procedures. There are 8 steps in troop leading procedures. They are not sequential. Now, they are written step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 because overwhelmingly they tend to follow a trend. But one of the things that we're taught as leaders is that the troop leading procedures can get very discombobulated, all right? And so what I'm going to introduce them to you, the 8 troop leading procedures, is the normative. That is the common way that you will be exposed to these as you move through the planning and preparation and then the conduct of the deliberate attack. First thing is we're going to receive a mission, and that can come from a warning order, that can come from a higher command or higher units mission order, or even a higher command, higher units operations order. Lastly, not often discussed but very much viable, is that it might come from your own initiative. You might realize, oh, now is the time and place to attack. So as soon as you receive the mission, a subset of that step is to start conducting a basic assessment. Now, some people see that as, oh, well, come up with a tentative plan. Okay, it can be part of that step too. Again, this is fluid, but generally, as soon as someone says, hey, this is what you're doing, as a combat commander, I start thinking, oh, well, this is what I have to consider. So I start thinking, hey, when is my no later than time? When do I have to have this done? Again, I want a lot of flexibility in there because I want to choose the time and place. But we have to face reality. So they might say, well, we want you to step off no later than, 12 hours from now or 18 hours from now or whatever it is, 6 hours from now. Well, then you use the rule of thumb 1/3, 2/3. That is, use 1/3 of this time before that no later than time, 1/3 to plan, and 2/3 to rehearse and prepare. Okay, so I need to know, in order to break it down like that, I need to know, when do we need to go? When is our no kidding, no later than thou shalt step off on the line of departure? What's the anticipated duration of the mission? Is this going to be a 30-minute, one and done? Are we going to be out there for hours, days? I need to know. Anticipated weather. Is it going to be inclement? Is it going to be hot? Is it going to be cold? What kind of precipitation are we looking at? What's the visibility? Are we doing this in day, at night, in a snowstorm? What's the terrain? Is it up and down? Is it all flat? Is it jungle? What's our mode of travel? Are we going to air assault in, truck assault in, leather personnel carrier we're going to walk in? What is the anticipated combat power and or assets of our enemy opponent here? So that's just some of the things I'm going to start assessing right away in my own little tiny head. And when I start assessing that, I'm going to gather my subordinate leaders and say, hey, come on in for a warno, a warning order, a warno. And I'm going to issue a warno at a very, very minimum. I mean, you can certainly make it bigger, but at a very minimum, what I'm trying to do is give information to my subordinate leaders so that they can start preparing themselves and their troops for this mission. So I'm going to say, first thing is, what's our mission? How's that nested in higher command's mission? Because our mission is always nested in a bigger element. That's just how the military works. So I want to explain that to them. I want to give them the time and the place of the operations order. That is, okay, guys, in 6 hours, we're going to meet in the mess hall to blah, 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 blah. I'm giving them time and the place. In the meantime, I'm going to continue developing my plan. And then all of the assessments I just said above, any details that I can give them, the weather, the terrain, the enemy situation, the friendly situation, how long do we have to prepare, all of those things. We definitely want to share those so that they can share them with their teams. Right? If we need to adjust those and they don't turn out to be true or things change, we're going to update them. That's okay. At this point, I want recon. Give me the intelligence, give me the surveillance, give me the reconnaissance, and I need to know what's our AO. Really, like, where's my left, right, and far center? I don't want to move outside of there because I certainly don't want fratricide. I don't want to shoot good guys, and I surely don't want them shooting my guys. So where's my AO? What are my limits? Are they concrete limits? Well, that's the ocean and that's a river, or that's a minefield, that's a mountaintop, whatever. I want to know the enemy size, location, capabilities, of course, but I also want to know their most likely course of action, COA, course of action. I want to know their most likely COA, and I want to know their most dangerous COA. That really helps me say, what are they likely to do? What's the, oh no, they're doing that. So I want to know about those friendly units. I want to know their size, locations, capability, as well as their most likely COA. I need to know civilian non-combatants in our AO, right? Don't like shooting innocent civilians. That's a big no-no. It doesn't help anybody. And then finally, I want to know key terrain in our AO, whatever that is. It can be man-made terrain such as road junctions and bridges and villages, or it can be, natural occurring terrain, rivers and mountains and ridges, okay, things like that. With this reconnaissance in hand, I start to make a tentative plan. Remember that the planning process, right? The whole MDMP, military decision-making process. That planning process, that's not an order yet. There's no magical fairy dust sprinkled on it where it becomes an order until we issue it as an op order. So this is the tentative. This is when all the good idea fairies are welcome and everything's in a state of flux and we're just trying to mature our understanding. The patrol leader, right, the senior commander of this mission, is responsible for paragraph 3 execution of the operations order. So you have to do that. Now, can you get other people to help you with the other 4 paragraphs? There are 5 paragraphs, right? Servicemen eat shit constantly, or situation, mission, execution, service and support, and command and signal. So there you go. Can you get other people to help that? You bet, and you should, particularly if you're under a time crunch. You have to oversee it, though. You can't just wave your hand of it. But the only thing that the commander is absolutely responsible for is paragraph 3 execution, which of course includes the commander's intent. So you need to come up with a scheme of maneuver from the friendly line of departure all the way to the enemy objective. I need to know what that's going to be. You need to assign phase lines via key terrain or key actions, one of the two. Often they go hand in hand. Assign subordinate roles to units. You are going to have this, you're going to see, we're going to break into 3 teams again. We are going to have a supporting team. We are going to have a breach team. We're going to have an assault team. And oh, by the way, we'll either have or it will be assigned to us a security team. And once we understand what those tasks are and everything that we want to do in the phase lines and our, in our time hacks, we then backwards plan, all right? Our no later than on the step off, or our no later on the objective is, that means our step off is, that means, yeah. So you shore up your time plan, and that's your tentative plan. The next step for us is going to be to finalize that plan. And again, remember, as intel comes in from reconnaissance, from our ISR assets, as intel comes in, it has the potential to radically change, even cancel this mission. So we don't ever want to ignore that. So at some point, we're working the PL and the APL, or working with the subordinate leaders, and at some point, after they've coordinated with all the different leaders, they're going to issue the operations order. That's the next step. But wait, let's not jump ahead. Who are they going to coordinate with? Well, a whole slew of people. The supporting unit commander and the forward unit commander. So the supporting unit commander is, hey, let's get with communication, S6 communications, right, with battalion, stuff like that. Let's get our channels, our frequencies, our SOIs, our call signs, authentications, our brevity codes. Let's get radios and batteries. Transportation, if it's available, we want to hook up with them, and that's usually an S4 at the battalion level. We're going to talk to indirect fire, whether that's close air support or whether that's mortars or artillery. Medevacs, I don't know how that's going to happen. Is it ambulance? Is it helicopters? Let's talk to them. Supply and reinforcements. Let's get all of our beans, bullets, batteries, and band-aids. And hey, when can we get more? And then we're going to coordinate with the forward unit commander for the passage of lines through the FLOT. Here, what you really typically, there are exceptions, typically what you're doing is you're moving behind the FLOT in that rear area to form a tactical assembly area and do your final rehearsals, coordinate for a guide through the FLOT, and then to move forward on into it. So there you go. Once you have this plan together, you issue an operations order. Personally, they say you can issue that as late as the tactical assembly area. But I like to do rehearsals well before I get there. So I like to issue long before we move to the tactical assembly area, at least for a deliberate attack. And that's why I say step 6 is issue your operations order. That is, again, that situation, mission, execution, support, and command and signal. A situation is our AO, the enemy and friendly, and the weather and the terrain and the visibility and durations of our actions. Also civilians on the battlefield, often called COBs. The mission is restate our mission, right? And how it nests within the higher command's mission. Execution, I need to know the commander's intent first and foremost. Okay, and there's an art form to that. It's not easy. But once you get used to it, it becomes very easy. And then our assignments by unit, our phase line, scheme and maneuver, and actions on the objective, or actions on contact. Probably both. We need to support, again, we talked about the attached units, things like medics or forward controllers, and where the friendlies are, transportation, passage of lines, fire support, medevac, and resupply, and then command and signal. Again, we talked about that, our chain of command and our comms frequencies and SOI considerations. At this point, again, specifically to the deliberate attack, we initiate movement, or at least typically we initiate movement at this point, and that is we move towards the forward line of troops, nesting just behind them in what's called a tactical assembly area. Before we start that movement, before we initiate movement, we should conduct a PCC, a pre-combat check. That is soldiers checking themselves, warriors checking themselves, and it would be very, very healthy and advisable for subordinate leaders to conduct PCIs, pre-combat inspections, on their troops' gear. You don't want to have a non-working radio or dead batteries or troop that forgot to take meals, their first aid, all of the things, rain gear, snivel gear. If we're going out in cold rain, that can shut down this mission. And so it's very important that the subordinate leaders conduct a PCI before we do a final PCI. Where do we do the final PCI? Often it is in that tactical assembly area. And after the PCI, that's when we start doing rehearsals. And rehearsals must cover, at a minimum, actions on the objective. The next highest priority are actions on contact, and then the next priority would be to rehearse key actions along our route. If there's linear danger areas, or we're going to do a river crossing, or whatever the case is, we're going to do a SEAL's halt. We want to rehearse that. Step 8 then is supervise the execution. Definitely that includes the rehearsals and all of this, as well as the passage of lines. So we are going to cross the line of departure, the LD, right? We're going to conduct a stop, look, listen, and smell. That's your SEAL's halt. We are going to move through the route to the attack position, the order of march, phase lines, crossing danger areas. We're going to cover the route to the assault position. That will often involve guides and security external to us, but maybe internal. And again, we have phase lines and danger areas to consider here. And then we have the route to the release points. Once again, guides and left, right, rear security. Actions on the objective. What kicks this off? What's our time hacks and what's our conditions of attack? And we're going to talk about that, as well as the limit of advance. And then reconsolidate and reorganize on the objective. One of the critical things about this is how to recognize success. That is, how to recognize signs of culmination and signs of momentum. Signs of culmination say, hey, we're reaching the end of our capability. Let's shore up and hold what we got. Signs of momentum are this: we're having way more success than we thought, and we need to follow up here. I know you're saying, wow, that's a lot to take in. So let's all take a deep breath and let's get it on the board and talk about it. Let's talk about what we just talked about. What does that mission look like? And so again, we're going to backwards plan from actions on our objective over here, this being our objective, right? Right now, we've moved here to the tactical assembly area. And we've already done our planning, we've issued our op order, we're doing final rehearsals, final PCIs, waiting for our time to do a passage of lines through our forward line of troops, the flock. And that's the FEBA, right? Forward edge of battle area. They're not synonymous, but they're almost synonymous. They're nuanced differences. Point is, FLOT FEBA right here, here's the good guys, and we're right behind it, so we're protected. As we move forward, we go into our SEALs halt. Now, that's an action, so I'm going to find some terrain that's close by and say, okay, that's going to be phase line 1. And then I'm going to dogleg into maybe an attack position, and there's a whole discussion here about we meet other units here, we come together. Remember that massing ourselves in great big, one single mass allows the enemy to use their, their mass casualty weapons on us. So it's not ideal, and if we can come together with other units here at the attack position, that's great. Also lets us do some coordination there. So that's going to be phase line 2, right? And then we're going to continue going, dog-legging in, so the enemy cannot tell which way we're going if they see us. And on phase line 3, we have yet another activity, and this is our assault position. This is final preparation. And then we go into our release point. An assault position is not an objective rally point. They are a nuanced difference. Objective rally point means we're coming back to this. An assault position, that's often not the case. Can we come back? Sure. But we're not leaving anything here, so we don't need to leave security there. Now, we go to a release point. Why is it called a release point? We're literally releasing to our subordinate units at this point here. And so let's spend some time talking about what actions on the objective look like forward of the release point. So from the release point, we have several things. The assumption here I'm going to make, all right, and it may not be the case, you've heard me say it several times already, is that up to this point, from here to here, that it is reconnaissance teams that are guiding, let's say battalion recon teams or some other asset outside of our unit, is providing this rear security at the release point. Because we know the enemy has LPOPs and screening forces that can conduct spoiling attacks. We also want flank, I'll spell it, flank security somewhere. Again, that's their primary mission. But it allows us an economy of force to use all of our assets of our unit in the actual attack. So we don't have to provide that. Somebody else is going to provide it for us. That's not always the case, but it's often enough the case. We're going to move forward. First thing we need to do is we need to set in a support by fire position. So we need to take the enemy under fire, or at least be prepared to. This gets complicated if we're prepping the enemy. There's their wire obstacles, mine obstacles, and everything else, and that's their defensive lines. Now this gets complicated if we're prepping the enemy with artillery fire or close air support or anything like that, because we may or may not be able to assume that until after the barrage is ended. I don't want to get my own guys killed by it. So you have to weigh that. It's a tactical decision, and again, it's so dependent on MET-TC, but really the T, terrain. What kind of terrain protection do you have from that artillery barrage? Okay, anyway, we have a support by fire position, and they're going to take the enemy under fire. That's what they're supposed to do. Suppress the enemy shooting back at us. Okay, so I want my heaviest weapons here, hard-hitting weapons, right? Machine guns, auto rifles, grenade launchers, rockets, whatever I can. So that's team 1. My next team, yes, we have another team, and they come in here, and they're the breach team. They're going to actually clear a causeway right through the enemy lines. Not through their line so much, but through their forward obstacles. That's the breach team's purpose. So if I'm clever, I'm at least using artillery or mortar smoke on this, smoking that out, and then I pop a smoke here so that they can work while obscured by the smoke. Very hard for the enemy to get them. But of course, if this is the only thing smoking, where are all the enemy guns shooting? That's right, they're shooting at this. So if you can't smoke out your objective, make sure that your flank security does a feint attack and throws some smoke of their own just to, make it look like, oh, there's several different points that the enemy are breaching our forward obstacles, because you don't want them to be all killed while they're trying to do this. Use lots of smoke. Lots of smoke. You can't use too much smoke on an attack, okay? So smoking out, we've got our breach team. They mark this often with some kind of like white engineering tape or something, but they mark the breach there, and then your third team. So this is the breach team, and this is the support team, and now your third team comes up. Your third team, once that breach is made, they are the assault team. They make initial hole in the enemy's line. Now, if you're looking at this, remember what I said about a needle popping a balloon? Here's the balloon, and it just keeps going over here. This is the enemy's combat power. What I don't want to do is try to use everything and hit all of them when all of their weapon systems can kill my guys. I know it feels intuitive, but please don't. We used to grab a raw egg and have people squeeze it, and so it's so fragile, and everybody says, oh, well, I can just squeeze this and break it, and they see just how powerful that eggshell is. But as soon as you crack it at one tiny point, well, then it gives away. Area defense works something akin to that. And so what we want to do is break it at one spot. And I don't want to run up and down here during an artillery barrage with everybody shooting at my guys looking for some door that they created that then gets us slaughtered. I'm going to make that door, and I'm going to do it. And how wide does that door need to be? Well, as wide as my shoulders. That's all it needs to be. I don't care that there's 4,000 of them and they stretch for, 8 miles. My door only needs to be wide enough to get one man through at a time. Now, bigger is better, but that's all it needs to be. So the assault team comes over here and starts destroying these critical positions. As soon as they do, the breach team then follows through and tries to destroy the enemy's CP. Okay? And we destroy that. We're going deep. We're not yet wrapping because there's depth here, right? We've got the obstacles here, we've got fighting positions here, we've got command post or mortar sections or other bunkers back there. We want to create this safe toehold right here. Once I do that, I've got my assault team and my breach team defending this, right? And they're forwarding in. That's when I take my support team, we go right through, and now I've got all 3 teams. I've got my entire unit on this side of the enemy, and we can start pushing out. You'll start to see this. I've actually seen it several different times in my life, and it starts collapsing fast because you're attacking from positions that their fighting positions aren't created to defend from. You're getting literally to their back door and throwing hand grenades into their bunkers, and this is not a good place for them to be. So they will pick up and fall back. They'll start falling back. That's why we have it designated limit of advance, right? That's our phase line 5. I can call that in. And typically around here we see signs of culmination, and that's what we've got. But we also might see momentum. That is, that this line is falling so quickly that, remember those that security team behind us, or perhaps even a follow-on team, if we're thinking ahead back here. But certainly we have local friendly units that we can say, hey guys, we've got great momentum, pull through here. Could we use this unit way back here? Yeah, but it might take them considerable time to get up here. I've got a close by flank security and rear security, bring them through the gap, and they can start either they can go for specifically, they can take key facility, key enemy resources and destroy them, basically just, a real quick attack, raid-like sort of thing. Or they can punch through here and start pursuing the enemy, fixing the enemy in their lines of egress, so that this team can then follow in, and it's a defeat in detail. A defeat in detail merits its own study and its own video, and we'll get into there. But I'm trying to show you that this security has far more of a role than meets the eye. Once again, it starts to act like a tactical reserve, because once we get that toehold, I can bring them forward and go after pursuit or exploitation at this time. In the unhappy event that we are repelled, it is us who are going to be falling back into lines of egress, and we need the flank and rear security to pull together and protect us to make sure the enemy doesn't come and do the same thing to us. So they play a critical role, and most of the time you're playing this role, you never even get to shoot your weapon. And you feel like, oh, I didn't play such a critical role. Nope. Very, very essential role here. That's what this starts to look like. I know, big mess, right? You're going, that's not pretty. And it's not. It really isn't. It's called a deliberate attack. But again, you have specific advantages here. You choose the time, you choose the place, and you mass your combat power against an enemy combat power that's arrayed to cover a greater area. So you can punch in deeply into that spot and pop the bubble. You can't underestimate that, or should not underestimate what you bring to bear. Let me make sure I leave a couple of links here in the video that you can do some further reading. Thank you.